how to search for your deity. This came up on my list of hot topics of the day. It's a kind of a surprising one. How do you search for your deity? It could mean a couple of things. One version of it is you want some guidance. I'm going to focus on that one. And the other is that where's your God? Where is your God now that things are going as they are going? What happened to God? You're doubting whether your deity is accessible or even whether your deity is working. I'm going to concentrate primarily on how to shop for a deity. I've got a buddy who's written a book called Shopping for Buddhas. But I want to focus on that one because it's a really interesting question. I know what it's like to want to find a deity. There have been times in my life when the doubts got overwhelming. I didn't know what to do next, and I had to find some guidance, or at least I wanted to find some guidance. It was like, look, I'm screwing this up. I'm not doing a good job. The problems I'm dealing with are too hard for me. Could someone take over? Is there someone around who might be able to help me out? Because I don't know what to do. This would be when I had lost a deity, when I couldn't find my deity. That is, I had my own spiritual ideas about higher powers and whatever. So in a way, the two questions are related. If you can't find your deity, maybe it's time for a new one. Maybe you're shopping for a new one. This is my first video that isn't scripted. When in doubt about what to do, try things out. That's an obvious and simple solution. I want to also recognize that it can be very difficult. For example, if your child has cancer and you're considering two potentially life-saving or life-ending therapies, when in doubt, try things out is not easy. Whenever you're dealing with a very difficult question. So I wrote a book called Doubt, a User's Guide. And I have heard from people who say, what do you mean? Doubt is kind of fun. Well, no, doubt is fun when it's not serious, when it's not life-threatening, when it's not dangerous. Iffiness becomes very difficult when it matters a lot. Okay? So I want to focus on that feeling we have. Someone else take over. I need some ally, some guide. And it doesn't tend to be experienced that way. It tends to be experienced more like a hunger that goes unacknowledged and then a revelation. I found a deity, despite myself, despite my skepticism. I found what I was looking for. It came to me. It was revealed to me, on drugs or through a friend, or I saw something, or I had a vision, or whatever. That's more like how we think about it. And I want to focus instead on the doubts that actually motivate it. If you get enough doubt, as I have in my life at various times, not currently, but I know what it's like, I began to doubt myself. I began to doubt my capacity to deal with the doubts I'm dealt. And at that point, I could find a guru, or I could find a spiritual practice, or I could find a team, a bunch of allies who were drawn to the same cosmic truth. A confidence that comes from humbling oneself before some authority, whether it be a god or a demagogue or a guru or a political leader. We're seeing a lot of that right now with the Trumpists. That is, they have found their source of their deity in Trump. And I want you to notice what's actually going on there. These are people who were dealing with the current clusterfuck. Life has gotten extremely complicated. There's a lot of doubts. There's a lot to doubt. And people were not feeling like they could keep up. And along comes this guy who sold himself on nothing more than that he's always right, righteous, and mighty. That is, it didn't matter what he won or whether he won. It only mattered that he claimed that he was the winner. And people were drawn to this. They didn't want to admit that they're doubting. They always knew the truth, and he came along and he's their leader and all of that sort of stuff. You could do this about any cause. You could do this about a guru, you could do this about someone on the left, right, spiritual, religious. None of that matters to it. That's all kind of a lifestyle that's kind of a lifestyle overlay, an ornamentation of this sense that you have found someone to defer to, a deity, a source of truth. And I'm saying that whether you had one or are looking for one, you are dealing with an addiction. Once you do that, you are providing comfort to yourself. That is, a sense that you are allied with something that knows what to do. You enter a state sort of like purgatory, which sounds bad, but it's actually, if you look at what it means a place where you're purging yourself of your failings. On the way, destined for heaven, destined for the truth. So it's like getting on an express train, or at least a train, that will take you to your destination. And it's an extremely addictive feeling. To feel like you have found the path. So you're not perfect, you're humble that way, but you are nonetheless on track. And you don't have to wonder about it. So, I'm working on it. I'm not enlightened yet. I'm not perfect, but I know what perfection is. It's an extremely addictive state. It both brings comfort to our own skin, which is the problem with doubt. Doubt makes us anxious. It makes us feel like we don't know what we're doing. We'd much prefer to feel like we'd solved reality, like we had the formula. And it also gives you leverage in the world, because if you've got a deity you defer to, you can then talk to others as though the universe or something higher than it, or the greatest authority, the one who solved reality, is on your side in any debate, in any challenge, in any conflict. You can defer the way that a car salesman defers to the manager. Say, it's not my choice. I didn't make the decision. It was made by this deity. There is an alternative to an external deity, which is to trust your almighty gut. So I know some people who talk like this. They say, the only time I've ever been wrong is when I didn't trust my gut. So that's a kind of an internalized deity. And it brings comfort to us to do that. And it also gives us a kind of leverage publicly or socially, or in an interaction with our partners or whatever, this sense that we have found what everyone needs, which is the recipe for living right. It's extremely addictive. I know, because at one time I did have, in effect, a guru. And then at some point I gave up on that guru because it wasn't working. And I entered a kind of cold turkey state. And I remember very well what it was like to feel like I had lost my source of guidance, that I had lost, and I found myself shopping for a new one. And I went through a transition at that point because I started to get interested in us shopping for guidance and what that's like. We had guidance as kids, good guidance or bad guidance, but we had parents and we had teachers. And they represented what was true. And they were kind of ambiguous this way. You might have parents who you don't trust to have solved reality, or you might have parents who you did trust to have solved reality. But one way or another, when you're young, when you're before you've grounded yourself in reality, you've got these intermediaries. You're basically parasitic on your parents' wisdom, whether it's wise or not. Parents are a really interesting intermediary between reality and us. On the one hand, they're a source of reality checks. Don't cross the street at red lights. On the other hand, they can bring all sorts of wackadoodle ideas to you and indoctrinate you. But one way or another, you had that, and in your adolescence, you weaned yourself off of that to the extent you gained your own independent mindedness. So yeah, we all have mommy and daddy issues to some extent, but some people have far less than others. And some of us have transferred our mommy and daddy issues to deities, whether they be human representations of what the universe wants, whether they be gods that are men with white beards, whether they're a higher power that wants something. And I want to point out that that's actually for comfort and for confidence. And to some extent, it's very persuasive with other people who are aligned with you. You say it's for company too. That is a congregation or a religion, which originally meant rebinding, binding together people. You get a social life through a common deity. The MAGA people are just high-flying, bare naked out the window, having so much fun these days because they have a common deity that brings them all together and makes them feel like they have found the truth, and the truth is hope and love. Okay? So this is an interesting thing that we tend to overlook, and it's really important. It's kind of disappointing to realize it. Each of these deity serving groups humble themselves before a lord and then lord it over other people. And they all do it grounded in the same generic abstractions, hope and love. You may feel as though your tribe, your lifestyle brand, your culture has a privileged access to hope and love because you guys have your hope and you also have your love. You have love for each other. You have love for a common deity. That's all very well, but so does every tribe. I have never heard of a tribe that actually doesn't claim to have exclusive rights to such platitudinous terms as hope and love. Trumpists are as hopeful as liberals are, or the resistance is. They're as loving of each other as liberals are. They're into justice by their definition. So I encourage you to try this out as a wonderful thought experiment. You know how with fortune cookies you can add "in bed" at the end of it? In bed, do that with "for me." At the end of any lifestyle branded platitude. That is, people want justice for me. People want love for me. People want hope for me. It's actually a kind of self-romancing. I would argue that all romance is self-romancing. It's romance by our terms. What is romance? It is the universal human dream of happily ever after. It lives in all of us and cannot be met by reality. And that's where I want to go with this, which is reality doesn't actually have deities. You can find guides how to do this or that, but you can't find someone who has solved reality, not here on earth and not up in the sky. There is none. There's nobody here but us chickens. Now, you may doubt that, and you may be offended that I say that and quick to dismiss what I'm saying because, after all, your tribe has found a source of truth, a higher power or whatever. Whether it's got a beard or not, none of that matters. It's whether the universe or something bigger than it is trying to achieve something that you can align with, so that you can say, in effect, the universe or something higher than it is on my side. But when you look at the history of our planet and the universe itself, there is clear evidence that no gods exist. No entity is trying to achieve something other than living beings. There's nobody here but us chickens, which is a line that you heard more in the 60s. Nobody here but us chickens. It came from some cartoon, I'm guessing. But it also is this. We are a very anxious species. We are chickens for completely natural, understandable reasons. Humans are the only known creature that has a full vocabulary. And as a result of having a full vocabulary, that is all these words that we use, we can imagine anything. All sorts of ideas float into our mind, all sorts of possibilities, and they are at cross purposes to each other. This treatment or that treatment for your child with cancer. So we are filled with doubts that no other animal can conceive, no other organism can conceive. And it makes us very anxious. I think of us as trudging through a sandstorm of mojo-eroding possibilities that no other organism can possibly imagine. So yes, we are anxious. We are chicken. And quite understandably so. No wonder we entered this state, the one I described myself as going through around 38 was probably the heaviest time. But I've had a few midlife crises and one post-midlife crisis where I didn't trust myself, didn't like the outcomes of my decisions, my bets on what to do. And I know that feeling very well, the anxiety. And because we have language and ideas, we are also capable of imagining deities, imagining that a fellow human is a deity or a messenger for a deity, imagining deities in the sky who could become our name-droppable allies. That is, we could claim that they side with us, that we're following their instructions, that we're living by their guidance, that we're in a state somewhat like purgatory where we're not perfect yet, but we at least know what perfection is. And I'm saying there's no evidence that such deities exist other than our yearning for them. We really wish they existed. If you look at the axial age, the age in which Buddhism, Platonism, Christianity, all of those were born, what you're hearing is people who are yearning for a way to solve reality once and for all. To enter that happily ever after state where you may not be perfect yet, but you know what perfection is and you can go for it. You hear it in Buddha's struggle to figure out the ultimate truth. You hear it in Christianity's claim to have found the original truth. And you hear it in Plato's search for the ultimate truth, for the ideal, for the perfect definition of friendship, the perfect definition of love, the perfect definition of all of that sort of stuff. And that quest has lived in us all along for very understandable reasons. We would want a deity who could guide us, who could tell us how to live, because the doubts can be so overwhelming. And we're seeing more and more of that as the world gets harder. Some of us thought we were going to, there would be a reduction in tribalism and infighting and all of that we would recognize that we're all one and come together in love and kindness. And many different tribes grandstanded that they're the ones who are championing that approach. But what we're actually seeing is a rise in tribalism, and as a result, a rise in what I'll call gossip. A kind of cattiness that would come with the human anxiety. The cattiness is, we're exceptional. Those other people are not as good. You know how much fun it is, how satisfying, how comforting it can be to talk about the cluelessness of other people? That is just, it's such a relief to feel like their egotism is beneath us, for example, or that they're negative, or whatever. And I'm saying that appetite runs strong in us and runs stronger the more anxious we get. And in the meantime, here's the challenge. If you're going to find a deity, you're going to get along better with yourself. You're going to feel peace of mind. And it's amazing how much of the deity sales job is really just saying, buy into us and you will feel peace. You will be at peace. So they're actually selling to that appetite. And that the people they're selling to are typically the most anxious. And they're not trying to imagine, they're so anxious, they're not trying to figure out how to be okay. They're trying to figure out how to be enlightened. Or they're claiming that they're enlightened right off. So here we are on earth, and our most immediate priority is feeling comfort in our own skin. Doubt is buzzkill. It does not help us feel comfort in our skin. And we also want connection, bond, love. For us, for me, remember the fortune cookie response. I want love. I'm for love. What do I mean by that? The kind of love I like, not the kind of love I hate. And so we want connection with other people as also reassuring. That is, it's great when we have a whole posse of people who are part of our tribal vision, our lifestyle brand, whatever. But that's not actually the priority we have to deal with. We don't just have to get along with ourselves. We don't just have to get along with other people. We have to get along with reality. And reality is not impressed by our tribalism, our cattiness, our gossip. Reality will screw you up. It's not trying to do anything. Reality is just the physical world and us in it, and the complications that arise from that. So it's not get real like you know what real is. That would be just more gossip and grandstanding and cattiness. No, it's attend to reality, pay attention to it. And for that, what I'm actually suggesting, the bottom line here is don't get a deity. Or get a deity in fiction and know that it's fiction. I do a lot of writing and talking about the importance of that. I need my deities. I get them. Most nights I watch TV. And in them, I'm imagining myself aligned with the deities of justice, the arc of the universe bending towards justice, crime doesn't pay, all of that sort of stuff. And the hero, the handsome hero, who is basically catty, but with a romantic overlay. If you ever stop and listen to what goes on in a movie like Gladiator, you're hearing a hero slaughter thousands with a background soundtrack that could go over a love scene. It's a very romantic soundtrack. So I get off on that. I have my deities, but they're in fiction, and after I watch the movie, I come back to reality, which I have to attend to. I'm stuck in it. It's a higher priority long term than our immediate need to feel like we've solved reality. So what I'm suggesting is more science-y, less gossipy. That would be something we would have to transition to. And it's very hard to transition to it if you've already gotten addicted to feeling like you've solved reality through a deity or through your gut, which always knows, something like that. What do I mean by science-y? I do not mean nerdy physical science. I mean something broader than that we employ when we're business people or when we're trying to get a date or something like that. It comes down to this. To get what you want, set aside what you want long enough to see what is. And then, better informed, you'll have more luck getting what you want. So if you run a business, you can give yourself great comfort by saying it's a surefire winner. But no, actually, you have to pay attention to the realities, the financials, all of that sort of stuff. So you see a certain kind of attitude there that is somewhat sciencey. If you want a date, stop paying attention to your romantic dreams of it and pay attention to who's out there, who's available, what they want. The customer is not always right, but you'll generally do better if you treat them as though they are. And at the more fundamental level, because again, it's not enough to satisfy your customers. It's not enough to get along with each other. We actually have to get along with reality. So facing into reality checks, even though they make us very doubtful, is, I think, a necessary condition for our survival. My biggest concern for humankind, what I consider to be the most likely cause of civilization's extinction, is what I'd call a dissociation death spiral, or an escapist death spiral, or you could call it a deification death spiral. Reality gets hard, we get anxious, we get filled with doubts, we seek some higher authority who can help us, help guide us, or can guide us. And in the process, we detach from reality. We pay less and less attention to reality. We get more into our comfort in our own in our own skin, comfort in our community. We neglect reality. Reality gets harder, and thereby motivates us to engage in still more dissociation, escapism, and deification. So if you don't have a deity yet and you're shopping for one, I encourage you to not. To actually face the fact that you are stuck making iffy decisions in life, that's reality. And if you've got one or had one and are trying to get over that one and find the next one, I want you to recognize, I hope you'll recognize just how addictive that is. We were addicted to it at birth. the ways in which we deified our parents to some extent or another. And if we got over them, we may have gained a real independence, or we may have found a new deity that teaches us how to say, I think for myself, when in fact we don't. I call it, I once was lost, but now I'm blind syndrome. And I want you to recognize how incredibly addictive it is when you think you have found the authority, and humbled yourself before an authority so you could lord it over other people. I think that's a real difficult thing to get over. And I think we've just entered a phase when a whole lot of people found the uber deity in MAGA. I do not see them dropping it easily. Cold turkeying off of that kind of authority is next to impossible. It's not impossible. I'm trying to figure out how to help people through the transition, midwifing themselves back into their autonomy, their actual capacity to think for themselves, rather than their bogus claim that they think for themselves because Trump says they do. Trump was a really intense version of deification. From what I can tell, he ran on nothing but pretending he's always right, righteous, and mighty. That is, he just pretended he was the Superman who had solved reality. Once you have people who are addicted to that, it's almost impossible to get them out of it. And I worry for humankind, for civilization itself, because we seem to be wanting to do that more. Real anxious times, a lot of doubt, a lot of, I'm not up to this, I'm going to find a deity, and a lot of claiming that we're not looking for one, but one just popped into our life and solved everything for us. So, is that a simple way to choose a deity? No, probably not, and nor is it an encouraging one. It's saying, don't look for a deity. Deal with the doubt you're dealt, and have some confidence from the fact that everybody is dealing with doubts. Some more than others. The wealthy have totally escaped into self-deification. That is, they have all the evidence they need that they are right about everything. And populist movements are just filled, whether they're leftist, right-wing, spiritual, religious, whatever, with people who say, I'm going to humble myself before that one because they've clearly solved reality.